the future of movie theaters it's going to be kind of like a theme park. Like you're noticing Disney is trying to start their own movie theater. They're releasing things day and day, and people were already not going to the theaters before the pandemic, and they're not going to theaters after the pandemic. So there needs to be a reason for you to actually not wait for streaming and actually go to the theater. So you're going to see like more like I think for those of you in Chicago, you've been to like the music box, you can buy alcohol and actually sit down and drink your beer while you watch the movie. You'll see things more like that. You'll see just trying to make it a little bit more exciting, but it won't be the holy grail for a filmmaker. Well, it'll be for the filmmaker because we like to see our work on screen. But as far as the business model, that's just going to be sort of one piece of the content distribution. And as far as making your own stuff, one thing to remember is this is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't have to become an Academy Award winner next week. Focus on what it is that you like to do, not what you want to get. Because a lot of times we think like, I need to win an Oscar, I need to win this award, I need that award. But what happens after you win that? So what is it that you like to do? Because a lot of people say they want to be filmmakers and content creators, and then when you start doing it, you find out that there's something else that you like to do a lot more than what you're actually doing. And also find people to collaborate with. This is a collaborative medium. And you may have a lot of skills, but you can't do everything. And you need to have more than just your own perspective whenever you're making anything. So find people to not only take the pressure off, but to also help lift you up and just make sure that you're keeping yourself sane.
I also just want to say that I do think in terms of like content distribution, I'm actually noticing a rise in the drive-in again. I don't know if any of y'all have been to the drive-in recently during the pandemic, but that's starting to come back. And I think that's it's not only great because it's a way for new theater owners just to kind of like establish their own space, but also it's going to be a new communal space, like literally for people just to come, and then you can appropriate it for different types of events. So I'm noticing out in Pennsylvania, there's one massive drive-in where they show new movies, they show old films, they have communal gatherings, barbecues, that sort of thing. So I think it's literally going to, the pandemic and also the rise of streaming has kind of gotten people itching to get outside almost in a strange way. I feel like we're going to see more big budget Hollywood blockbuster movies in theaters now, and people are going to be staying at home streaming movies that are going to be more like a slower burn, I guess you could say. And as for advice for creators, I also concur. This is 100%. This is a marathon. You just pace yourself. It's not a race. You network, get to know people, talk to people, and don't be afraid to reach out and ask someone, hey, how'd you do this? Like someone on Instagram, because like if you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram, like you have access to so many people now, especially on Twitter and even on TikTok too. A lot of content creators on TikTok. And the other thing is, share with your friends, your family, and, get feedback, and then use your own network to help push your own work and get it seen.
Yeah, I can't really speak to trends and such. I'm kind of an outlier in that way. I kind of do my own thing. My head's not really in the same realm as perhaps David and Maris, but I want to add to what Maris said in terms of not just do what you enjoy doing, but really try to understand why you're getting involved. If you're content creating, why are you doing it? This is something that I only now really fully understand. As I said earlier, I was getting a lot wrong in the very beginnings of a lot of thought, but also just filmmaking in terms of like identity exploration, racial identity exploration. If you don't have a solid grasp as to why you're even working this hard, why you're struggling, then I mean that's really the most important thing, right? And it's also just to say more about representation and identity work is like if you're really committed to trying to better what small part of the world that you are in or affect, then you got to challenge yourself and think outside the box of what is typically discussed, typically talked about, and ask what calls out to you outside the realms of, say, how, this is something that I'm speaking about myself, how I feel about being mixed, right? For me, there was a really, really sharp up ramp from this discussion of identity into, oh, okay, let's talk about systems of oppression which create identities that we then deal with in the contemporary, right? And this is a relatively, there are a couple of folks who are doing that type of work in the, the mixed genre of racial identity and histories, but for the most part, it's a good niche for me. And it makes a lot of sense. And it also speaks to Mars's point, what I really care about, which is social justice through, education, which arguably, you can educate people as long as you want, and sometimes they're just going to ignore it. But at the end of the day, it's still worth documenting stories of folks that are forgotten about, such as, like Black natives or Vietnamese refugees who are mixed and came to the U.S. because there was a law that specifically allowed mixed people to come to the U.S. during the Vietnam War, which is pretty fucked up. Sorry, excuse me, language. So there's, in terms of identifying why you're doing what you're doing, try and really challenge yourself and be critical of what you're thinking and what you're doing. It can only pay off in the long term.
Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, yes, Mars, go jump in.
If I can add on to what CA was saying about go find your niche, go niche, because you'll find even with like bigger production companies, they're looking for somebody who has a niche and area of expertise. So figure out whose problem does your work solve. There's a simple equation that I use, which is my work helps X achieve Y through Z. So what is the work that you are making? How are you helping somebody solve their problem? Because if you can position yourself as an expert that is solving somebody's particular problems through whatever medium that you work in, that will actually help you build a consistent career where you can define who you are rather than relying on somebody else to tell you who you're supposed to be.